Okay, we are officially recording. Welcome everybody to, this is actually official episode 3 of the Rob Anderson Show. Today we are here with Carl Stedmond, and I'm going to introduce Carl just quickly, but I'll let him, introduce himself more elaborately. But Carl, thank you very much for coming on today.
Welcome, Rob.
So just to give everybody a little bit of a background of how I met Carl, it's only been a few months now. It seems longer than that because we've been working together a little bit the past little while. So it seems like we've been friends for years, but I guess it's only been a few months. Carl reached out to me. He had initially, I guess, saw me on a Nicholas Finyaman's show, I think it was a few months ago. So we've been chatting every week, and he asked me to be a part of a project that he's got upcoming too, called the Quantum Lounge. So he's invited me into a group that I don't know if you could explain more about that, Carl, because I don't know how you came about it or found everybody. Yeah. But so yeah, thanks again for having me on. So tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how we met and how you got to where you are today in life, I guess.
Yeah. Hey guys. Yeah, I met Rob. I seen him on his show, as Rob said, a couple of months ago, and I loved Rob's energy. And everything is energy in the matrix that we live in of energy. It was very positive. And I was putting together a group of people, like-minded and like-hearted people, who basically want to change the world. They want to make the world a better place. And I'm sure a lot of people want to do it, but there are people who are actually doing it. So the people that I connected with, people that I've known over the years, they don't just talk about it. They're out there in the field trying to make the world a better place, So that's when I connected with Rob, because he doesn't live too far away from me. And so Rob and I connected, and I wanted him to be accepted by the other guys in the Quantum Lounge that I brought together. And so we've set that up now.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on, Rob. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say thank you. It's been great because it's been the past few weeks speaking with all of you every week on Sundays. It's just, yeah, I look forward to it all week. So it's a really good group, and I like the intellectual companionship of it all, right? Yeah,
well, we all bring something different to it, don't we, Rob? Mm-hmm. And each one of the 8, there's 8 of us. 8's a great number too, the number of infinity. And they're all out doing their own thing in their own way. But I thought if we brought all these people together, we can make a bigger impact, because, my God, the world needs it right now, doesn't it? We all know that. It's unprecedented times right now. And yeah, it's very exciting what we're setting up.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. So I appreciate you explaining that to everybody, and I haven't had a chance to post it, so I'm just waiting for David to send me the link. So I'm going to post it up on my channel, so that'll be coming up in the next day or so. So Carl, I kind of mentioned before our call, like you and I, we know each other, but for the people out there listening that have no idea who you are, give us, kind of the Cole's notes, the quick run through. You don't have to go, just let it flow. I mean, you're going to be back on the show, so just kind of go, if you're the elevator pitch of who Carl Stedmond is.
Yeah, okay. You can probably tell by my accent that I'm from England. I'm from a place very, very close to Liverpool. And I came over, well, basically I had a rough upbringing, Liverpool and Merseyside's a tough area. And also I was in a wheelchair for 3 years, so I was very disempowered from the age of 8 till 11. Then at the age of 14, I discovered Bruce Lee. And it was something within, there was an energy about him. It wasn't just about fighting, it was the philosophy and everything about it. But anyway, I got involved in karate, and I've been doing that now for nearly 50 years. I emigrated. So anyway, I had a pretty regular upbringing, but quite rough. I got out my wheelchair, started karate, done the regular things that we do, met a woman, got married, came to Canada. I opened my own dojo here in Canada, which is Karate Club, in 1991, called the Liverpool School of Martial Arts. But then after probably about around the year 2000, I went through an awful lot of hardships in my life. I got divorced. I lost my home. I lost the martial arts club. I broke my ankle. My father died, all within a very, very short period of time. And I was devastated. I was close to suicide. But not long after that, I had a mystical experience and what I'd call a shift in consciousness, where I started to realize that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And within this matrix of energy, we create our own reality, because everything's vibration. So every thought that you have, every word you speak, and of course, every action you take, you can literally create your own reality. Or should I say co-create your own reality, because we're all spiritual beings, but we have the power of the universe flowing through us. And when you become more aware of that, you become more conscious of where you put your energy, the type of things you watch, the type of things you're doing. And I decided that I was going to become a singer. So I became a singer, and I started writing songs. And then I met Dan Clancy from the band Lighthouse. If your audience is younger, Rob, they might know, but Lighthouse had some very big hits. Dan Clancy was the lead singer. He took me under his wing, and we created my first CD, The Diary of an Uneducated Man. And it's basically the songs on that album are all based on my awakening, my shift in consciousness.
That's great. So that's awesome, Carl. And I've heard many of the songs. So what we'll do is I'll get you to send me the links too, so that way anybody wants to hear them, you can put, you know, wherever they can download them or listen to them.
Yeah.
So how would you say, you know, there's different levels of awakening. What would you say some of the most profound experiences, you know, in your mystical awakening? Was it a radical shift? Like where were you politically? Like, how did you see the world? What, you know, were you always awake, and then you know, kind of, if that makes sense?
I consider myself very grounded, Rob, to be honest with you, you know, and I always felt there was something not right in the world, you know, and I've never really been aligned to any politics or anything. I've always really done my own thing, became self-employed. I really became self-empowered myself. So but one of the big things that happened to me when I had this shift in consciousness was I was in the bath meditating, because I'd started to understand about meditation and that type of stuff. And I had an out-of-body experience.
Okay.
That was, it's hard to describe in the 3D language, because I'm sure I know a lot of people do go through these things, and a lot of people go through near-death experiences, but mine wasn't near-death. I was perfectly healthy, but I was almost from like away to in a dream. And in that dream, my whole life flashed in front of me, of being a little boy in England in the wheelchair, and the energy that I went through, and my whole life flashed me by. And then I see myself on stage, like singing and writing a book and that, and then I come out of it. And I was already starting to understand the energy of who I was, but it wasn't like that strong. As you say, it was like a gradual thing. But after that experience, I decided, I went into my martial arts dojo. I changed the name of the club from the Liverpool School of Martial Arts to the Harmony Centre, which is still running in Pickering now, because one of my old black belts took it over, and you know, and I, you know, still teach for him as well. But it was such a massive shift that, yeah, and that from that moment I changed.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. It's interesting because, you know, everybody has different levels of awareness, and I think that, you know, there's, for myself, I had a spiritual awakening, I guess I would say a couple months ago, and that was while I was meditating as well. And you know, I've had outer body experiences when in my 20s. We'll say they weren't induced by meditating, that's for sure. They were certainly drug induced, but you know, that's just the reality of it is, and I can't change it. I'm not going to say it didn't happen, and I'm glad that it happened, because you know, you could go around saying, oh, you know, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. It profoundly changed my life, to the point where one time where I was scared when it was happening, because I didn't know what was happening. It was so, you know, it was basically like dreaming, like you said, while I was awake, and having outer body experiences and just transcendental things where I just in a different dimension, right? And once that happens, you kind of you never quite see life the same. And, you know, I go
Yeah,
through periods where I forget how beautiful it is,
yeah,
you know, sometimes you get sucked into the world, right? And you don't even realize that you're there, and then you forget. And then I was like, but now, you know, since meeting you and having my second or multiple, you know, maybe third or fourth spiritual awakening, you really start living into that. And once you meet other people that have had that experience, you don't feel so crazy. And I think that's what we're here to do, is to help other people not feel so crazy. Because, you know,
yeah.
to be honest, aside from you, that's why I'm so grateful and I'm thankful for all the guidance you've shared and all the wisdom, you know, and the friendship and just the talking and collaborating. And like I said, I always call it intellectual companionship, because you know, and I like the title of your album, you know, The Diary of an Uneducated Man, because so many people put this emphasis on education and these little letters at the end of their name on a business card, but
Yeah,
most of those don't mean anything, because having an education in our, you know, in our society sometimes inhibits you from spiritual awakening, I think, because you have to really get to be spiritual. It's almost like an undoing of a lot of the stuff that we've been taught or raised with, at least over here in this society. How would you say Canada is different? What made you decide to move to Canada, and how would you say it was different, maybe politically, or, you know, just how did you feel with energies, and, you know, what was your reasoning for coming over?
I actually came in 1987 for a vacation with my ex-wife, and I was in England. I had my own business. I was quite successful, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rob, something just appeared on my screen, so I don't know what that is.
That's okay.
Um, and so I absolutely loved it, and I didn't really understand why until later on. It just felt like light. It felt light. The energy felt light, and I didn't really know much about energy back then in 1987. It was only years later when I heard Eckhart Tolle talking about what they call the pain body. Like different countries have like a pain body. Countries that are at war a lot, there's a dense energy, almost like, you know, if you walk in the room and there's been a huge argument or trouble, you feel that energy, right? Well, when I came to Canada, I felt a very light energy. It was only years later that Eckhart Tolle spoke about it. But when I felt that, I loved it. I just loved the way of life. I loved the expansiveness of it. I decided that, you know, my wife's parents, my ex-wife's parents lived here. And when I said to her, I'm going to, because I was almost semi-retired at the age of 28, right back then. I had two hairdressing salons because by trade, I was a hairstylist. And, you know, I was working part-time, I had a lot of staff. But I went back, I sold my salons, and I was back here within a year because I loved it so much. And yeah, because of the energy, politically wise, to me, I think they're all the same. You know, very, you say one thing, and then when they get in, you don't do that much. But so I think we the people have got to, I think things have got to change. And I think maybe that's what's happening on the planet right now, Rob. There's a big shift, there's a change happening, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. And it really depends on who you ask, but I think people see it differently as to the truth of what's going on. How do we know what the ultimate truth is? There's 7 billion people, we're co-creating it. What one person's truth is isn't necessarily the truth for me and you, somebody on the other side of the world. So that's what I really like about connecting with not only you, but since you know, since we've met, and some of the directions you've pointed me in, and also from being on Nicholas's show, is I've had, you know, people reaching out from all over the world.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm finding, like, you know, I have friends from Egypt and down in Mexico now, and, you know, just like Australia, like just everywhere. And I'm getting more each day, and I'm behind on my messages, but to get people what's really going on in those countries,
Yeah.
from the people, not with our, and it's really crazy, because you can actually get better news about North America from other countries, because North American media is just horrible. And like,
Yeah.
and it's actually crazy. So I actually sometimes go, just for fun, when I'm doing my research, is I go find like non-biased news sites from, you know, from all the countries of the world. You can pick the country and just go, and it's not propaganda titles, it's all just text, right? So you can actually see without the sensationalist titles and everything. And but yeah, it's just really interesting what's going on here. And I don't know, I'm kind of coming to different levels of awakening about it as well, but I definitely think there's a major shift in consciousness. Even the people that were really asleep before, like you have to, with all this nonsense that's going on with COVID, I'm not saying that there's not a virus. You know, I get that there is a virus, but is it so bad that we need to cripple the world economy and all the things that go along with it? I don't think that it is. And now we're over a year into it. And how's it any different? Like, you know, and now there's, you know, it seems like it's going to be a never ending cycle that's going down the wrong road.
Yeah.
What would you say that's giving you hope? What's giving you hope during these times, Carl?
The divine consciousness, Rob. You know, some people call it God. To me, it's all the same thing. And I believe we're all connected. And my message is always quite simple. Like, the people, we're all in this together, you know, because I have family members too, and some friends who don't agree with what I feel. But I said, you know, it doesn't matter if you agree or not. We're in this together, and for our children's sake, we really need to make the right decisions. We are not seeing any conversations at what we call the highest levels of government. We don't see conversations. All we're seeing right now is censorship of doctors, nurses, scientists. Why? Because a lot of these doctors, nurses, and scientists have got everything to lose and nothing to gain. So we have to use our common sense there and say, well, why aren't they having these conversations when these people who, some of them are like peace Nobel Prize winners, and they're being censored? Yeah. Why is that happening? That's the only question I ask. And I say to people, because of everything is energy in this matrix of energy, what we focus on too, so all people are getting is fear. And, you know, fear is a very low energy and love is a high energy. So when we keep focusing on that fear, it actually does disease throughout the body, instead of putting out vitamin D, sunshine, exercise, happiness, laughter, all the things that are going to make you feel better and be better. So that's what I don't understand, Rob, you know?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. And I think, you know, all those things, hugging people, spending time with family, laughing, having a good meal, like in a big group, like, you know, you know, it makes you realize the things that are more important. And I hope at the other side of all this, like, you know, a lot of my family hasn't gotten together, not just because this year, the past, what's going on, but, you know, things get older, you know, everybody gets older and moves on with their lives. It's like, I think after this is, you know, once we get the go ahead and things are, you know, fixed and we can gather again in large groups, I think a lot of people are going to be having family get-togethers on a scale that you never.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think we all have our part to play, Rob. You know, different people work in different ways. And I've got a friend, Franco De Nicola, and he puts videos out, and he is so, I would say, almost enlightened. He's so consciously aware in a way. And he makes perfect sense. If we want a new world, we have to visualize that new world and work towards that, not look at the old world that is obviously not working. But it wasn't working even before the lockdown, Rob. It needed a shake-up, right? People were so into stuff rather than into joy, happiness, and peace. And maybe my awakening came through pain, through heartache in my life. Because, and a lot of people, because I started a group called Conscious Conversations after my shift in consciousness, and everyone who walked through that door, without fail, all had been through a lot of pain in their life to realize there was something deeper within. But if your life is, I'm okay, Jack, you got the car, you got the house, you got everything, you don't really realize, you don't go within. It's always you're looking out, what, you know what I'm saying? And this pain for a lot of people, I think it's causing an awakening. It's making people realize what is truly important. As you said, Rob, you know, being with family and friends, hugging, laughter, parties. Human beings are absolutely capable of anything. Like if you, I know you and I spoke about Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, these leading edge thought scientists are proven what we can do with our thoughts, with our energy in the quantum world. But you do not see that on regular TV. You don't see it on the news.
No, because they don't want you knowing those things, because then they can't sell you the cures. Like, like, I'm not saying I'm invincible, but the past, 10 years ago, I was 250 pounds. I was 75 pounds at least overweight. And I said, how did I get here? Like, I looked in the mirror, and like you said, I think a lot of things come through pain, and
Yeah.
it either comes through pain or lots of meditation. But to have the discipline, it seems in our society that you're going to experience the pain more than you're going to experience somebody who's disciplined enough to do 3 hours of meditation. Because I've tried 3 hours of meditation, it's really tough. But I too, all the times that I've gone through really traumatic things, there's always a shift after, and I see things slightly different. And even this time, to the point where I was meditating, and I've told a few people, and I've told you, but I was meditating and I had my eyes closed. And people say seeing the light. I'm careful who I tell people that now too, because they think I'm like, oh, some fooey guy, like, oh, he said he saw the light. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, I physically saw a light within. Like, I had my eyes closed, I was meditating, and I threw my palms up over my hands or my eyes to make sure the light wasn't coming from outside, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that light was still there. Like, and so when people, they don't understand that I'm like, they think it like metaphorically speaking, or but I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I literally saw a light, and I don't know what happened. It lasted for about, I would say, 3 to 5 minutes, and I just stayed there with it, and I drifted away, and I haven't seen it since. But my life has been way different ever since that happened.
Yeah.
And it's just, whether it's all these coincidences, things manifesting differently, like synchronicities, and it sounds all crazy, because I was a skeptic of these things before, but once it starts happening to you, it's like I see things differently. Like animal, people, it was like spirit animals and things like that. Like the next morning after that happened, there was a falcon right outside my window just sitting there. I've got beautiful pictures of this thing. I've never seen one before. And it sounds cheesy maybe to somebody who's not awake, but it's just the most profound thing when you have that shift in consciousness. It's like, I want people to be not afraid of it, because it can be scary.
Yeah.
Because your old world is melting away.
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift, Rob, isn't it? I remember when I was going through it, and I started reading a lot of books, and because I consider myself a very grounded lad from Merseyside, England, and so I've always known there was something. I've always felt connected to God or divine, or whatever you want to call that divine energy,
Yeah.
But I started reading books about quantum physics and energy, and I think right now science and spirituality have met, and they're both saying the same thing when we're saying we're all connected. That consciousness that we all are and we're all connected to. But the thing that takes us away from that, and this was a massive thing for me, was the voice in your head. And everyone has a voice in their head, but not many people really become self-aware of that voice. We talk to ourselves, and if, let's say, for instance, if you're getting on a train and there's someone sitting there and you were talking to themselves out loud, you probably wouldn't sit next to them because you think they were crazy. And yet, most people do that nearly all the time. They talk to themselves. So it's about lowering that voice down, and maybe even turn it off. It's very hard to turn it off completely, but to not have that voice in your head, and then you start creating from your awareness to become self-aware, what you're saying, your actions, because everything becomes a habit. And as Bruce Lipton talks about, from the time we're born to the time we're 7 or 8, we download everything. We download our environment. We download what we're taught at school. It goes into that supercomputer and it stays there. And you are programmed for life unless you become self-aware and change them programs, which we can do,
Yeah, 100%. That's why everything you say when you speak, Carl, I love it, because I'm like, yes, this guy's like so on point with this stuff. So it just makes me so happy to hear you talk. And I love chatting with you, because not only is it reciprocal? But I always feel like I'm learning too, right? And I think that everybody has the key. Like nobody's gonna have it figured out. Like there's 7 billion of us. I feel sometimes I'm like, I wish I could meet everybody, because every one of those spirits probably has a gift to give to you that you don't even know. And that's what people who aren't awake, they run the risk. You're missing out on so much beauty, because I think it was you and Sam and I that chatted about meeting people that are almost like angels, right? And it's weird mystical experiences. I told you about meeting that gentleman, and that happens to me a lot in life. Like, you said there was one, I was on the subway one time, and this guy, I went and sat down, and this guy, I was trying to just fall asleep, and this gentleman, I could see he was talking to people, and I was like, oh no, he's coming my way. And then he sits down right in front of me, and he starts talking to me, and I'm like, oh man, I'm like, okay, like, and he already made other people feel uncomfortable and move. And I was like, I'm not moving. Like, I'm just going to ask this guy what he wants. And, nobody gave him the time of day, literally. And that's what he wanted. He just got out of the hospital, and, he looked like he maybe was drunk or something. And he had some bandages, and he looked in rough shape, but he was clearly, he told me that he was in the hospital the night before for drinking or something, or whatever it was. It wasn't important, but his watch the time was not set correctly. And so he just wanted help getting the time. And I was like, okay, I don't know how to set your watch, but I can give you the time. So I pulled out my phone and told him the time. And then he got off at the next stop, and he said, thank you. And it's like he smiled at me in a way that was like, that's all he wanted. All those people, just all he wanted was the time, but nobody even had the time for this guy. They just assumed and left, and I almost did the same thing too. But I had that awareness of like, it's probably easier to just ask this person what they need, and that's all he needed was the help with his watch, or he just wanted to know the time. And it was one of those like profound moments in my life where I'll never forget that moment, because maybe it was a special gift to just happen to me. Like maybe that, it's like, everybody's actors in our lives to some extent, but that looked like, to me, that was like a profound gift, just this random occurrence with this guy. And I was so grateful that instead of being like, listen, dude, I don't have the time to talk to you like everybody else did, I connected with that guy, and that's all he wanted, was just that human connection, right?
Absolutely, Rob. I like to say, be open to everything and attached to nothing, And it's funny, you could talk to people about these things and they might think it's strange. And most people do believe in ghosts or hauntings and things like that. Funny, I was in the car today, and on the radio, there's this house for sale I think it was in Canada somewhere. It's up for sale for $150,000, and it's been proven there's paranormal activities there. And yet a lot of people believe that, and yet they don't believe these other things. There are many, many things that that possibilities, many possibilities, but are you open to them? Because if you close yourself off to that type of stuff, it'd be a very boring life, right? It's lovely to have a mystical awareness and imagination. Life is magical, right? Be open to that magic.
Yeah, you're totally right. And I think there's so many ways that we get closed off to that magic, whether it be, sometimes it doesn't have to be the news, because those negative frequencies, like you said, people are programmed. So you could be getting it from your wife or your brother or your sister or your kids, and it's, myself personally, I don't have children or anything like that. And I really feel for some of my friends who are parents right now, because they have, I have friends who have teenager kids, and, we're all feisty when we're young lads and things like that. So it's, it's understandable, because I was a teenager once, but to dealing with them, because, some of my friends, they don't even see the COVID restrictions the same as their children, right? So they're like almost getting these, and I think, wow, that's a very tough dynamic. I've had personal, not all my family sees the same way. So I've had, disagreements, and it's caused rifts between my family members too, because we don't all see it differently. And it's interesting because, how you said about, to me, this is not that, I don't want to say conspiracy theory, because I don't want to push listeners away. I like to speak about fact, but it is the greatest political divide that I've ever seen in my lifetime, because, they couldn't get us with, I think people came to, like, it seems like that they're always throwing these reasons that we should be at war with each other or inside. And it never worked before, race wars and this and that. And then people started moving all around the world, and it's like, yeah, we're all just people. And so how can we separate them even further and divide the house? And it's like, well, now it's vaccinated and unvaccinated, mask and anti-mask. And it's like, how did anti-mask
Yeah.
become, masks weren't a thing. I'm not anti-mask. You can't be anti something that we're just like, you know what I mean? They've demonized.
Yeah, I do, Rob. I think there's a lot of truth to that. There always seems to be something to put fear into people and to divide the people, you know, and yet we're all the same, no matter what color our skin, no matter where we're from, no matter what religion people follow. We're all human beings, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that's the important part. And about, and that's another reason too, it's about experiences. It's because it's not the experience that you're having in your life that causes the pain. It's the way you view that situation, you know? So we can look at things differently. And sometimes when you look at things differently, that perception changes things, shifts things, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And I chatted with somebody the other night that I've always had, you know, and I was actually, and I was speaking with my mom about it too, because, you know, we're closer now probably than ever. And, you know, her and my dad, you know, they had separated multiple times when we were younger and finally got a divorce when I was about 8. But we had to work through it and have some serious conversations because I'm the oldest son, and I was playing middleman between my mom and my father for a lot of years, right? And it wasn't maybe necessarily the healthiest dynamic for a kid, you know. And she, you know, she said, you know, I'm sorry that I put you through that. And I was like, Mom, it's not about that, because I know that you were just doing the best with what you had, and so was Dad. And that's I've always had that awareness, is maybe it was a gift that I was given as a young kid, is that usually when somebody's upset with you or somebody's acting out of anger, it's because of a fear or a conditioning or a trauma. And I try to think about what caused that person, because when I get upset, why did I get upset? It's usually not the reason you think, you know. It's something, somebody triggers something in you.
Yeah.
And I'm, you know, I used to have a temper problem when I was a kid. I think, you know, until we learn how to harness it, it's just part of growing up. Would you say that, how has martial arts affected you in your life? We chatted a little bit about this and about when I was a kid and taking Taekwondo and stuff, and I was having trouble with meditating. Did the way you looked at martial arts shift when you had your spiritual awakening?
Yeah, it did. Massively, massively, yeah. And I teach in a different way now. I teach mostly children now. And see, a lot of people are not in martial arts long enough to get the true benefits out of it. You know, it's only really when they say when you get to black belt, you really start learning. And for me, it was all about, when I look back on my life, it was about kicking away at my own ego through hard, disciplined training, you know, with focus and consistency that really helps you as a human being, you know. But after my shift in consciousness, I wanted to teach straight away, because I knew the kids mightn't be there for many, many years, that the champion is within you. Each and every one of us are capable of magic, you know, truly magic. But it's all the way we think with our mind, you know. And if you've been brought up in a way that is very negative, you know, when you're told that you're stupid and you can't do this and you can't do that, that becomes your reality. And that's what you create in your life. And we know that, I mean, there's a lot of things now on YouTube and whatever, how to go on this course and go on that course. It's massive right now, but it's simple. Well, it's simple, and yet it's not simple, because we are the magic, but sometimes you need a bit of a guide to get to that magic. And as I say, I always say, the big one is being very aware of your thinking, you know.
Yeah, I would agree. And we don't understand. I think for me, the shift was probably just over about 10 years ago when I read Tony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant Within. And he talked about neuro-linguistic programming. And,
Yes.
and actually, one of my friends found this, long story short, there was at the old condo we used to live at, there was a bookcase with all these books. And sometimes, you know, people would leave stuff when they would move. And sometimes I lived with my brother and one of my best friends, you know, and so we'd have, when I'd leave on the weekends, you know, sometimes people would be like, oh, there's a chair, we need a chair for the condo. So they grab stuff, and I'd be like, guys, could you stop grabbing stuff from the garbage for my condo? You know, like, I don't want any more other people's garbage, you know? And then this one time there's this bookshelf and I'm going to throw it out, but the bookshelf with the thing of books, and one of the books falls out, and it's actually this book right here. I had it here, How to Win Friends and Influence
Oh
People.
yeah, Dale Carnegie.
So I looked at this box differently, and it was all self-help books. And like, I was actually getting mad at my buddy, and now I have to thank him, because that box of books that he just randomly grabbed with the shelf had all these self-help books and all these amazing books in them. And I've read them, and it was like a gift, right? Like this crazy gift from God. Because I mean, to buy all those books, there was probably, I don't know, it was a shelf full. So there's probably about 30 books there, that would be a couple $100 in books to buy them all. And so that really changed my life, just getting and just expanding, because those things are not taught anywhere in school.
No.
You might get a little dabble here and there from, if you have somebody in your family that's kind of enlightened, but where I grew up in Sudbury, it's a small mining town, and not to say that it's, there's not smart people there, but it's not like cutting edge thinking capital of the world, per se, so to find books like that and spirituality, like nobody was doing yoga growing up when I was a kid in Sudbury, Ontario, so to come to those things and go through those awakenings, I don't know what the journey is for everybody, because you have to want it too. You have to ask for it. It can happen by trauma, but you have to have that. I would say, the only reason I stay away from the words God is because I was raised predominantly Catholic for a lot of years. And then, some of my family was United, but I don't really agree with the Catholic religion. And I have, I mean, no offense to people who are Catholic, because there are good people in that religion, but I saw, maybe it was my church, but I just didn't, there was something that didn't fit right with me about it. And so I didn't use the word God for the longest time. I used universe or infinite intelligence, because I felt that the word God people had wrung it from its original meaning, and it almost pushed people away. So I didn't use the word God but now it's a synonym, right? So I use it interchangeably with the other things like you mentioned. But having those awakenings, it's really interesting, because as you mentioned, I went through traumatic things when my stepfather was dying, and we were forced to move from my house. My brother broke his ankle the same way that you did. It wasn't quite the same, but my businesses went under. I lost all this money. These guys owed me a bunch of money. And at the end of the year, they said they weren't paying me this and that. And so I had to make the decision to whether do I go after it or just let it go. And, it was a lot of money to me at the time, and all that was going on, and it was so stressful. So that shift came from the trauma, and then COVID hitting, and it didn't get any better. So that's when I had my second spiritual awakening. It's like, I'm at the end of my rope here. Like, I can't even go out and work. We're on lockdown. Like, it's not a joke anymore. Like, people's livelihoods are being revoked from them. So I think the time to wake up is happening now. And a lot of people are happening, but it's almost like it's a show to see who's going to wake up, and people are still just fast asleep, So I don't know what the answer is. And I hope that we all together, the more of us that get together, I think that it just creates that critical mass, and we move forward, and people are going to be like, wow, these guys are doing it. And they're right. Deep down inside, I think so many people are scared to admit those spiritual experiences that they have, because they fear they're going to be condemned from their parents or their brother or their sister. And people are scared to, you mentioned it earlier, people are just so comfortable with their lives that they don't know, if you don't lose your whole identity and what you thought you were, it's very hard to go through a spiritual awakening, because you're just going to go through the motions.
I think what you said before, Rob, too, it's very, very true. It's about, you've got to want it, but sometimes it takes a trigger to want it, and pain is a great trigger. You're talking about a book. When I started to have my shift, I started to read a lot of books, and I started to, coincidences would happen in my life. So I'd go along with them. Like one day I was walking in Costco, and a book was sticking out, and literally I opened the book, and it was a book called Conversations with God. And it wasn't about a God, a man up there in the sky. So I read a couple of pages in Costco. I'm going to buy that. So I bought the book. And so I read the book. And then basically the book was about a guy, Neil Donald Walsh, who lost everything in his life. Again, he lived on the street for a year and a half. He's still alive now, Neil Donald Walsh. It became a New York Times bestseller. It was on there for a year or so.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him.
Yeah, and they made a movie about his life. And basically, he lost everything, and he had this shift. and he started to understand how the universe works, you know. But one day when I was reading the book, at the same time, there was a movie out then called What the Bleep Do We Know? It was all about quantum physics and that. And so I watched it over and over because I started to realize that you can reprogram your mind, you know. And one day I was watching it and I'm reading the book, and at the same time, as I'm reading the book, I had the movie on it. The movie, it said, as I'm reading the line, there are no such thing as coincidences. I had to get up, pause the video, take it back a bit to make sure I wasn't going crazy. Sure enough, at exactly the same time I'm reading, there are no coincidences in life. It's all meant to be. It said it on the DVD, and that was like, you know, I can't get any more like getting hit with a hammer. Like, wake up, you're part of the universe. Universal consciousness is working through you. It's working through everyone. There's an old saying, actually it's from the book, God talks to everyone, but not everyone listens, because everyone is so busy in life doing, and we're not human doings, we're human beings, right? Yeah. And it's being able to be still, quiet the mind, and we can connect to that energy, you know?
100%. And, you know, I agree with everything you said. And it's really learning to connect and have that space. And I think that society is almost, you know, it is how you perceive it, right? But we have to be like, because we are co-creating it, and a lot of the co-creation has been bad. So it's like, you look at society and it, you know, you have to have that shift in perception, because it is easy to get swallowed up into it, right? It is, yeah. Like, you know, and we talked at the get-go, and the alarm just went off, so maybe we should think about wrapping it up. But
okay, Rob, yeah.
But you know, you and I, we could probably talk for 3 more hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, that the shift in consciousness that needs to happen, and the waking people up. And I think that, you know, it's been great for me to connect with you, and then the people that you introduced me to. And when I had that recent shift the past few months, the coincidences have been they're not, they can't be just coincidences, like, no. You know, and it's getting over my fear. Even, you know, I'm a creative guy, and like, I worked in sales for so many years, and I'm the kind of guy, like, I'll pick up the phone and call anybody on planet Earth. Like, if you can find me that person's number, I'll call them and say, hey, like, that's just who I am. Yeah. But even I'm learning new ways of getting rid of my old fears, because I still have, like, you know, I was telling somebody else on a call the other day that, you know, I ride my motorcycle at 200 kilometers an hour, but I'm scared to ask a girl out on a date sometimes, you know? So I still have my own fears. They're just different than other people's. So we all, like, people think, that's what I think people have to understand, is that it's a staircase, you know? It's not like, boom, one day, you know, we talked about spiritual awakenings and I saw the light, but I think that only happens to people that have gone through all these other stages, or, you know, maybe there are certain traumatic events, like sometimes they say a hit in the head or something like that, or a fall or something could trigger some sort of awakenings as well. But you have to realize that it is a staircase or ascension, right? So it can be scary. And I think that, you know, thank you for being there to talk with me openly. And I want my audience to know, and your audience to know, and the people that, you know, that are watching this, that it's okay to ask for help, and, you know, to sit with your friends that, and especially in this world now where it seems there's so much hate, and that's the thing that's dividing us, you know, is that it really open up to the people that, if people say, hey, you know, like, if you resonate with anything that Carl said or Rob said, reach out to us, because trust me, we're loving guys. We're not gonna ostracize you or say that you're crazy, because you're probably not. And it's the people that aren't willing to have these conversations that are the crazy ones. So I guess we'll wrap it up. I'll stop recording soon, Carl, but I just want to say thank you for coming on. Why don't you tell everybody about your radio show? Because I hope I'll post this probably tomorrow. So tell everybody about your radio show and where they can find your music, and, you know, any things that you have coming up in the next few weeks and this summer, so that they can, you know, if people do resonate with your message, they can find you.
And can I just share one last thing, Rob, too? A thing that profoundly changed me was one day after losing everything, I was close to suicide, and I happened to watch a DVD by Eckhart Tolle. It's called The Flowering of Consciousness, and it spoke all about the mind and thoughts. And within 20 minutes of watching this, my life went from this black cloud of death and just fear to understanding that it all came from my own thoughts. Changed my life forever. So I ask everyone, check out Eckhart Tolle. He has many videos on YouTube. He has lots of books. Changed my life, profound. So yeah, my radio show starts on Thursday morning, Rob. It's called The Joy of Being, and it is on o2radio.ca. It's 9 a.m. Eastern time in Canada. And you can get my albums on iTunes. I've got 2 albums, The Diary of an Uneducated Man and The Greatest Me, which is a children's CD. And it's done by a composer named Peter Nelson. I'm the singer, and I wrote one of the songs on the albums. And that's also on iTunes, called The Greatest Me. At the moment, I don't have anything coming up except my radio show because of what's going on in the world. But hopefully I can get out there soon and do some shows again.
Yeah, definitely. That'd be great. You know, I want to see one of your live shows, and hopefully, you know, if I can come out and do some video or some behind the scenes of one of your shows, I think that would be super cool too for one of our events. And so yeah, everybody, you know, check out Carl's stuff and stick around, Carl, because I'm going to end the conversation here. I'll say thank you one more time, and then we'll you and I can have a wrap up personally. But thanks again for coming on, Carl, and everybody, make sure you check out Carl's music, download it, listen to it, listen to what he says. And if you want to send him a message, get in touch with me. If you think, you know, if you think Carl, you need to speak with him. He's a very, very open, honest, loving guy. And so, yeah, send me an email and I'll make sure you put in touch. And we're always willing to have conversations with people. And, you know, it's very tough times out there. Like you said, being close to suicide, I've been there too. So I know that friends and family have lost loved ones because of this. So, you know, reach out to somebody. And if you don't feel comfortable doing friends and family, we're just a phone call or a message away. So thanks again, Carl, and wave bye to everybody. And
thanks guys.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.